The millionaire ran away on their wedding night, but fate doesn't forget. She was reborn from the ashes and became the face the whole world desired. Now he crawls for attention, and she decides the ending. Get ready to feel every second of this turnaround. Before you go on, tell me which moment of this plot struck you the most. It's your voice here that makes our little corner grow. And be sure to join the channel's family, because the outcome of this story will turn any soap opera on its head. Marina Olsen had always believed in happy endings, not the fantastical kind, with princes charming and fairy tale castles, but the possible real ones built with patience and true love. At 29, she thought she had finally found hers. She was about to marry Philip Archer, a 34-year-old businessman who seemed to have stepped out of a business and lifestyle magazine. Successful, elegant, possessing a magnetic personality that drew glances wherever he went. He was a partner in one of London's largest financial consultancies, travelled frequently abroad, frequented the most exclusive circles of the London capital, and still, he had chosen her. Marina Olsen, the only daughter of a retired teacher and raised by her paternal grandmother since she was 16, never imagined she would be in that position. With a degree in graphic design, she had worked as a freelancer for years, creating visual identities for small businesses, editing advertising materials, and doing occasional jobs that barely paid the bills. She lived in a modest apartment in the Islington neighbourhood, inherited from her grandma Cindy, a strong-willed woman who had raised her with affection and strictness, teaching her to value the little they had and never to depend on anyone. But with Philip, for the first time, Marina allowed herself to dream of something bigger, not for the money, but for the feeling of being chosen, valued, loved intensely and overwhelmingly. They met at a contemporary art fair at the British Museum on a rainy Sunday in April. Marina was there to study visual references for a branding project, while Philip was accompanying a foreign client interested in investing in British art. The encounter was casual, but the connection was immediate. He approached her in front of an installation of broken mirrors and made an ironic comment about how that artwork perfectly summarized the financial market. She laughed. He insisted on the conversation. They exchanged numbers, and from then on everything happened at a speed Marina could barely keep up with. Philip was intense. He called every day, sent flowers to her apartment, arranged dinners at sophisticated restaurants Marina had never set foot in. He took her to see the penthouse where he lived in Kensington, with panoramic views of the city, minimalist decor, and a wine cellar worth more than Grandma Cindy's entire apartment. He introduced her to his friends, all successful, all full of stories about travel, business, and achievements. Marina felt out of place at first, but Philip always pulled her close, held her hand firmly as if telling the world that she belonged there by his side. In 6 months, he proposed. It was on a trip to Brighton for a long weekend. They were staying in a charming guest house in the historic centre, and Philip organised a private dinner by the sea. There were candles, live music, and a diamond ring Marina would never have dared to wear in any other context. She said yes before he even finished the sentence. She cried, he did too, and for the first time for the long time Marina felt that life was finally being generous to her. The wedding preparation was a whirlwind. Philip insisted on paying for everything: catering, decoration, dress, honeymoon. Marina tried to contribute, but he always brushed her off, saying he wanted her to feel like a princess, that she deserved the best. The ceremony would be held at a historic estate in the Cotswolds, a bucolic and sophisticated location that combined rustic charm with contemporary elegance. There would be about 150 guests, including friends, Philip's colleagues, and a few of Marina's relatives. Grandma Cindy, her grandmother, was radiant. She said she would finally see her granddaughter happy, settled, protected. But a few days before the big day, something happened. Something small, almost imperceptible, but which planted a seed of doubt in Marina's heart. It was on a Tuesday evening during dinner at the penthouse. They were sitting on the sofa planning the last details of their honeymoon trip to the Amalfi Coast when Philip's cell phone vibrated on the coffee table. He picked it up quickly, but not quickly enough. Marina saw the name on the screen, Veronica Evans, and below a message preview. We need to talk before all this happens. Philip locked the screen, put the phone in his pocket and smiled at her, as if nothing had happened. Marina felt a tightening in her chest, but swallowed the question she wanted to ask. She didn't want to seem insecure, jealous, suspicious. Philip had always been transparent, always treated her with respect. But that name, Veronica Evans, was not unknown. Marina knew who she was. Veronica was an influential businesswoman, owner of a chain of luxury gyms spread across London and Manchester. In addition to having stakes in technology startups, she was a few years older than Philip, perhaps nearing 40, and was part of his same business circle. Marina had already seen her in some photos from corporate events Philip attended. Veronica was elegant, self-assured, the type of woman who seemed to have been born knowing exactly who she was and what she wanted. Marina tried to hide her discomfort. She casually asked who it was, and Philip replied naturally that it was just a business colleague, that they were in talks about a possible joint investment. She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. There were only 4 days left until the wedding. Their bags were already packed, the dress fitted, the vows written. So Marina chose to put it behind her and move forward. The wedding day dawned clear and sunny, a rarity for October in London. The estate was impeccable, decorated with white and green flowers, discreet lights hanging from ancient trees, and an atmosphere that combined romance and sophistication. Marina woke up early, surrounded by her grandmother, 2 close friends, and the beauty team hired by Philip. The dress was a dream, lacy, delicate, with a long train and a neckline that flattered her silhouette without exaggeration. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized her own image. She was radiant, emotional, ready to start a new life. The ceremony was moving. Philip was impeccable in his navy blue suit, his eyes fixed on her from the moment Marina entered the garden to the sound of the string quartet. Grandma Cindy cried throughout the ceremony, holding her granddaughter's hand before giving her away to the groom. Vows were exchanged, rings placed, and when Philip kissed her, Marina felt that everything was right. The party was lively, guests danced late into the night, and Marina floated in a state of almost unreal happiness. But it was on their wedding night that everything fell apart. After the party, they went to a luxurious suite booked at the estate itself, an isolated cottage surrounded by gardens and lit by old lanterns. Marina was tired, but happy. She took a long bath, put on the silk nightgown she had chosen especially for that night, and came out of the bathroom expecting to find Philip, also relaxed, smiling, ready to celebrate the beginning of their life together. Instead, she found a man sitting on the edge of the bed, his tie undone, and his gaze distant, fixed on the floor. He didn't smile when he saw her. He said nothing for long seconds that seemed to stretch into eternity. Marina felt her heart race, anxiety taking over her body. It was only when she asked what was happening that Philip finally spoke. And what he said destroyed everything Marina had built in recent months. He said he needed to be honest, that he couldn't start this marriage by lying, that he was in love with someone else, with Veronica Evans, that their relationship had started a few years ago intermittently and that he had tried to end everything when he met Marina but couldn't. That Veronica was the kind of woman who understood him, who belonged to the same world as him, who shared the same ambitions and values. That Marina was incredible, sweet, kind. But he realized too late that she was too simple for the lifestyle he led. Marina listened in silence, paralyzed. Philip's words echoed in her mind as if they were being spoken in slow motion. Too simple. Too simple. He had married her, promised eternal love before God, family, and friends, only to confess on their first night that he was in love with someone else, and worse, that she wasn't enough, that she never would be. When Philip finished speaking, Marina couldn't say anything. She just picked up her things, still wearing the silk nightgown, put on a coat, and left the cottage. She called a ride-sharing app, ignoring the curious glances of the estate staff who were still tidying up. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just left. She returned to Grandma Cindy's apartment in the early hours of the morning, her crumpled wedding dress inside a suitcase, and her eyes dry from holding back tears. Grandma Cindy woke up startled by the sound of the door, and when she saw her granddaughter there alone on her wedding night, she understood that something terrible had happened. Marina collapsed into her grandmother's arms and finally cried. In the following days, Marina barely left her room. She didn't answer calls, didn't reply to messages. Philip tried to contact her a few times, sending short, formal texts, apologizing and offering an amicable separation. Marina blocked his number. There was nothing to be said. The marriage that was supposed to be the beginning of everything had been the end. The pain Marina felt was not just the pain of abandonment. It was the pain of having been measured, evaluated, and deemed insufficient. All her life, she had strived to be better, to build a solid career, to be independent. But at that moment, she felt that none of it mattered. In Philip's eyes, she was just a simple woman who didn't deserve to be by his side. And worse, he had waited until the wedding to say it. The weeks that followed were the most difficult of Marina's life. She stopped accepting jobs, stopped leaving the house, stopped caring about her appearance. She spent her days in bed, alternating between moments of uncontrollable crying and a deep apathy that left her empty. Grandma Cindy tried to cheer her up, cooked her favorite foods, played cheerful music around the house, but nothing seemed to work. Marina was grieving, not for the loss of Philip, but for the loss of the version of herself who had believed she was enough. It was only after a month that something began to change. Marina woke up one November morning and looked at herself in the mirror. She was thin, pale, with deep, dark circles under her eyes and disheveled hair. She didn't recognize herself, and it was precisely because she didn't recognize herself that something stirred within her. It wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge, it was a visceral desire to rise again, to prove, not to Philip, but to herself, that she was much more than that moment of humiliation. Marina started slowly. First, she began taking a shower every day again. Then, she tidied her room, washed accumulated clothes, opened the windows to let the sun in. She started accepting small design jobs again, simple projects she could do at home. She redecorated her own space, painted the walls a soft beige, organized her work materials, bought plants to decorate the balcony. With each small gesture, she felt that she was, little by little, rescuing pieces of herself that had been crushed. Grandma Cindy watched everything with a mixture of relief and pride. She saw her granddaughter slowly but determinedly being reborn. And Marina, even while still carrying the pain in her chest, began to understand that perhaps all of it had been necessary, that perhaps she needed to be broken to learn to rise again on her own strength. And, for the first time in a long time, she began to believe that life might still hold better days for her. She didn't know how or when, but she felt that something was about to change. December arrived with the characteristic heat of London's summer, bringing with it a sense of renewal that Marina hadn't expected to feel. It had been almost 2 months since the wedding night that never happened, and although the wound was still there, throbbing at times, it no longer bled as before. Marina had learned to live with the pain, to transform it into fuel, to move forward. The therapy she began at Grandma Cindy's insistence also helped. Twice a week she confided in her psychologist about the feeling of inadequacy, about the fear of never trusting anyone again, about the shame of having believed in empty promises. Jobs started coming in more frequently. Marina revamped her portfolio, created a professional profile on social media, and began to promote her services more strategically. One of her projects, a visual identity for an artisan coffee shop in Shoreditch, went viral on Instagram. The owner was so satisfied that he recommended Marina to other entrepreneurs in the area. In a few weeks, she had a full schedule, and for the first time in a long time felt proud of her own work. It was on a warm December afternoon, while walking through Westfield, London to buy a Christmas present for her grandmother, that Marina's life took an unexpected turn. She had stopped for an espresso at one of the corridor kiosks, a quick break before continuing her shopping. She was distracted, looking at the window of a home decor store, thinking about how some of the displayed objects could inspire future projects, when she turned abruptly to grab the coffee cup she had left on the counter. She didn't see the man passing by her side. The result was disastrous. The coffee spilled completely over his impeccable white shirt, staining the fabric with the dark, hot liquid. Marina froze for a second, horrified by what she had just done. The man looked down, seeing his ruined shirt, and Marina was already preparing to hear a scolding, a complaint, perhaps even a demand for compensation. But what came was completely unexpected. He looked at her and smiled. It wasn't a forced or ironic smile, it was genuine almost, amused. "My fault, I'm sorry," he said in a calm and pleasant voice. "I was distracted and didn't see you turning." Marina was speechless for a few seconds. He was apologizing when it was clearly her fault. No, it was my fault," Marina replied, flustered, grabbing napkins from the counter and trying without much success to clean his shirt. "I'm really, truly sorry. I'll pay for the dry cleaning, or a new shirt, or whatever is necessary." He chuckled, a light, relaxed laugh, and gently held her hand, preventing her from continuing to rub the napkins on his shirt. "Relax," he said. "It's just a shirt. Nothing a laundry can't fix." Marina finally stopped and looked at him more closely. He was tall, must have been about 35, with slightly disheveled brown hair, green eyes, and a calm expression that contrasted with the situation. He was wearing dark jeans, casual shoes, and that now coffee-stained shirt. There was something about him that conveyed an almost contagious calm. "I'm really sorry," Marina repeated, still embarrassed. "Seriously, no need to worry," he replied, still smiling. "Trust me, I've been through worse." They parted ways there, quickly and politely. Marina continued her shopping, but couldn't get that encounter out of her head. The way he had reacted without irritation, without arrogance, was so different from everything she had experienced recently. It was a simple gesture, but it left a mark on her. What Marina didn't expect was to meet him again the same day a few hours later. She was in the shopping center's bookstore, leafing through design and photography books, when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "So, you like art?" Marina turned around and came face to face with the same man from the coffee incident. He had a bag in his hand and a surprised but pleasant expression. "You again," Marina said, unable to suppress a smile. "Sorry again about the coffee," he laughed. "Stop apologizing. I told you it's fine. And answering your implicit question, yes, I'm also here by chance. Or maybe the universe is trying to tell us something." Marina felt her face flush. It wasn't common for her to feel this way, especially after everything she had been through. But there was something about him that made her feel at ease. They started talking, first about books, then about art, and soon they were discussing everything. Music, cinema, professional frustrations, abandoned and rekindled dreams. He introduced himself as Lucas Foster, an architect, recently returned from a work stint in Manchester and now back in London to take on a large project at an architecture firm in central London. Marina said she was a graphic designer, worked as a freelancer, and was rebuilding her career after a difficult period. She didn't go into detail. She wasn't ready for that. Lucas was different from Philip in every way. Where Philip was intense and overwhelming, Lucas was serene and patient. Where Philip talked about achievements and status, Lucas talked about meaning and purpose. He didn't try to impress her. He just talked, listened, laughed. And Marina, for the first time in months, felt light. Before they knew it, 2 hours had passed in the bookstore. The shopping center was about to close, and they were still there, sitting on the floor between the shelves, surrounded by books. It was Lucas who suggested they exchange numbers and continue that conversation another time. Marina hesitated for a second, but agreed. In the following days, they exchanged messages. They were light conversations, without demands, without games. Lucas asked about her day, shared photos of projects he was developing, sent songs he thought she would like. Marina, little by little, began to open up. She talked about her work, about her grandmother, about the feeling of starting from scratch. Lucas listened, or rather read, and always responded with something that made her feel understood. Their first official date happened on a Friday evening at a coffee shop in the Notting Hill neighborhood. Lucas chose the place, a small and cozy coffee shop with rustic wooden tables, yellow lights, and a jazz playlist in the background. Marina arrived punctually, wearing a simple beige linen dress and flat sandals. Lucas was already there, leafing through a book, and stood up as soon as he saw her. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Marina discovered that Lucas had also been hurt in the past. He had ended a 5-year relationship about a year ago with a woman who thought he was too nice and lacked ambition. She wanted someone more aggressive, more competitive, more concerned with making money than with doing work he loved. Lucas tried to change to please her, but realized he was losing himself in the process. So, he ended it. He suffered, but he rebuilt himself. Marina listened to his story and felt a deep connection. They were two wounded adults, trying to rise again in a world that demanded perfection all the time. And somehow, finding each other felt right. From that day on, their meetings became frequent. Impromptu coffees, walks through Hyde Park, simple dinners in discreet restaurants. Lucas never pressured Marina to talk about what had happened in her past. He was simply present, offering a safe space for her to be who she really was without masks. Grandma Cindy noticed the change in her granddaughter. Marina was smiling more, talking more, going out more. Her grandmother didn't ask many questions, but was happy to see that the girl was starting to live again. It was on a January evening, during a walk along the Brighton seafront where they had gone for a weekend, that Marina finally told Lucas about Philip, about the marriage that never materialized, about the humiliation of being considered too simple, about the pain of not having been enough. She cried as she spoke, and Lucas just held her hand, listening to every word without interrupting. When she finished, Lucas was silent for a few seconds. Then he turned to her and said something Marina would never forget. "You weren't too simple for him. He was too shallow for you." Marina felt something break inside her, not in the sense of destruction, but in the sense of liberation, as if those words had broken a wall she had built to protect herself from pain. She hugged Lucas and cried again, but this time it wasn't tears of sadness. It was relief. As her relationship with Lucas flourished, Marina's career also began to take off unexpectedly. One of her clients, the owner of a contemporary art gallery in Shoreditch, was so impressed with her work that he recommended her to a renowned London photographer, Brandon Miller, who was looking for someone to collaborate on an artistic project. Brandon was known for his authorial essays, which blended photography, art, and fashion in a unique and visceral way. When Brandon contacted her, Marina was surprised. He explained that he was developing a project called Reconstruction, which explored the idea of emotional rebirth through intense and authentic portraits. He was looking for real women, with real stories, who had experienced profound ruptures and were in the process of rebuilding themselves. Marina fit the profile perfectly. At first, Marina hesitated. She didn't see herself as a model, much less as someone who could be photographed for a large-scale artistic project. But Lucas encouraged her. He said she had something unique, a silent strength that deserved to be seen. Marina accepted. The shoot took place in an industrial studio in Hackney Wick, with peeled walls, large windows, and natural light streaming in golden beams. Brandon directed the shoot with sensitivity. He didn't ask for artificial poses or forced smiles. He asked for truth, and Marina delivered. Each click of the camera captured not just her image, but her essence, vulnerable, strong, reborn. When the photos were ready, Marina could barely believe it was her. There was an intensity in her gaze, a raw and authentic beauty she had never seen in herself. Brandon was ecstatic. He said these were some of the best images he had ever produced. The project was launched in a collective exhibition at the Tate Modern in London. Marina's photos were among the most commented. Art critics praised the authenticity of the images. Alternative fashion and culture magazines requested permission to republish the photos. And suddenly Marina began receiving invitations, independent fashion brands, advertising campaigns, magazine editorials, all small still, but significant. Marina didn't see herself as a model, but she realized that this wasn't about conventional beauty. It was about narrative, about telling stories through images. And she had a story to tell. Lucas followed everything closely, always present behind the scenes, always rooting for her. He never showed jealousy or insecurity. On the contrary, he celebrated each of her achievements as if it were his own victory. And Marina, for the first time, felt she was with someone who truly wanted to see her shine. But not everything was rosy. Marina still had difficult days, moments when anxiety returned with force, when Philip's voice echoed in her mind, telling her she was too simple. In these moments, Lucas was there, not with empty words of motivation, but with presence. He held her hand, cooked for her, played music she liked, and just stayed there, in silence, until the storm passed. In February, Marina was invited to participate in a charity fashion show organized by a renowned London designer. It would be her first show, a small but important runway, bringing together various personalities from British independent fashion. Marina accepted, but the anxiety was overwhelming. On the eve of the show, she could barely sleep. She stayed awake all night, mentally reviewing everything that could go wrong, feeling the weight of expectation, the fear of failing, of disappointing, of proving that deep down she wasn't good enough. On the day of the show, Marina arrived backstage completely shaken. Her hands trembled, her breathing was erratic, and she felt she could faint at any moment. She tried to hide it but couldn't. That's when Lucas, who had come with her for support, noticed. He found Marina sitting on the floor in an isolated corner backstage, trying to control her breathing and holding back tears. Lucas said nothing at first. He just sat beside her, took her hand, and began to breathe slowly, encouraging her to match his rhythm. After a few minutes, when Marina had calmed down a little, he spoke. "Remember when we first met and you spilled coffee on me?" Marina gave a weak laugh, her eyes still watery. "How could I forget?" "Exactly," Lucas continued. "That day you were so embarrassed you could barely look me in the eyes. But even so, you didn't run away. You stayed there, apologized, tried to fix it, and you know why. Because you're brave. You don't know it yet, but you're one of the bravest people I know." Marina looked at him, feeling the tears finally stream down. "Today is no different," Lucas said. "You've been through much worse things than walking a runway. And you survived. You're here. And you're going to walk that runway because you deserve to. Not for the applause, not for the photos, but because you know how much it cost to get here, and no one can take that away from you." Marina hugged Lucas tightly, feeling the certainty of those words. He was right. She had already faced humiliation, abandonment, pain. A runway wasn't going to destroy her. Minutes later, when they called her, Marina stood up, wiped her tears, adjusted her dress, and walked to the entrance of the runway. The music started, the lights came on, and she took the first step. It wasn't perfect, she was still nervous, but it was real. And when she reached the end of the runway, she looked at the audience and saw no judgment. She saw recognition. She saw respect. And above all, she saw that she belonged there. When she returned backstage, Lucas was waiting, and it was in his arms that Marina finally understood. What she had lost with Philip was not love. It was an illusion. And what she was building with Lucas was something much more valuable. It was partnership. It was respect. It was truth. The following months were a period of accelerated growth for Marina. The charity fashion show opened doors she had never imagined possible. Alternative modeling agencies began to contact her, interested in representing her. These weren't the big traditional agencies that sought conventional beauty standards, but artistic collectives and companies that valued authenticity and the story behind each face. Marina, who just a few months ago could barely get out of bed, was now being sought after by brands that wanted her essence, her truth. It was a sustainable fashion curator, Camilla Taylor, who first saw Marina's full potential. Camilla was known in the market for working only with ethical brands and models with real stories. She contacted Marina via Instagram, proposing a collaboration for a spring-summer campaign for a British fashion label that was gaining international recognition. The proposal was daring. Marina would be the main face of the campaign, which had the theme of female reconstruction after emotional ruptures. Marina accepted. The campaign was photographed in Cornwall, England, in a paradisiacal location with deserted beaches and imposing cliffs. For 5 days, Marina lived a transformative experience. She worked with a creative team that treated her not as a decorative object, but as an essential collaborator. They listened to her ideas, respected her limits, and celebrated her authenticity. The resulting photos were powerful, Marina in flowing linen and cotton dresses, barefoot on the sand, hair loose, in the wind, and a gaze that blended vulnerability and strength in a way that touched those who saw it. When the campaign was launched in April, the impact was immediate. Social media exploded. Women from all over the UK shared the images, identifying with the narrative of overcoming. Fashion magazines published articles about Marina, not just as a model, but as a symbol of a new generation that valued authenticity above perfection. She was invited to give interviews on podcasts and radio shows, where she carefully and honestly told parts of her journey. Marina never mentioned Philip by name, but she spoke about the pain of not being seen, about the process of reconstruction, about the importance of finding herself again after being broken. And people listened, because it was real, because it was true. Lucas followed everything with discreet pride. He never tried to occupy space in Marina's achievements, never demanded attention. He was there, behind the scenes, being the safe harbor she needed. When Marina returned exhausted from trips, he prepared dinner. When she had anxiety attacks before important events, he held her hand and reminded her of everything she had already overcome. And Marina, for the first time in her life, felt she was in a balanced relationship, where there were no demands, only partnership. With the growth of her career came new opportunities. Marina was invited to participate in a fashion editorial for a prestigious magazine, alongside other models who also had stories of overcoming. She was called to walk in London Fashion Week, in a special event celebrating the diversity of bodies and stories. And, to her surprise, she received a proposal to develop her own product line. The idea came from Camilla, the curator who had believed in her from the beginning. Camilla suggested that Marina create an authorial brand aimed at women who were in the process of emotional reconstruction. It wouldn't just be about clothes, but about creating a community, a safe space where women could share their stories and find support. Marina loved the idea. She had always been a designer, always worked with visual identities, and now she had the chance to build something that truly meant something to her. The project started small. Marina developed a line of t-shirts and sweatshirts with original phrases that had emerged from her own reflections during the healing process. Phrases like, "I choose to rise every day. My story doesn't end where someone abandoned me. I am enough, I always was." Each piece came with a tag that told a little of Marina's story and encouraged women to share their own journeys on social media with a hashtag created for this purpose. The launch was modest, an online pre-sale, and a small event at an art gallery in Shoreditch. But the response was overwhelming. The pieces sold out in less than 48 hours. Women from all over the UK bought, wore and shared photos with the clothes, telling their own stories of overcoming. Marina cried reading the testimonials that arrived daily. It was as if, by healing her own pain, she was helping other women heal theirs. Lucas was by her side every step of the way. He helped pack products in Grandma Cindy's garage, organized shipping logistics, created spreadsheets to control orders. He didn't do it out of obligation, but because he believed in her. And Marina felt that for the first time, she was building something truly hers. However, not everything was rosy. With visibility also came the shadows of the past. It was in May, during the launch of her brand's second collection, that Marina discovered she was being sabotaged. It all started when a major fashion brand, which had contacted Marina for a possible partnership, cancelled the meeting at the last minute, without explanation. Then an event where Marina was scheduled to be a speaker was cancelled, also without clear justifications. And to top it off, a magazine that had scheduled a cover story with her suddenly changed its mind, citing editorial changes. Marina found it strange. It didn't seem like a coincidence. It was Camilla who discovered what was happening. During a dinner with contacts in the fashion industry, she heard veiled comments about an influential businesswoman who was reportedly pressuring to have Marina excluded from certain circles. Camilla investigated further and discovered the name, Veronica Evans. When Camilla told Marina, her world seemed to collapse again. Veronica, the woman Philip had left her for, the woman who, apparently, was now his wife. Marina had no idea that Veronica was so attentive to her trajectory, but it made sense. Veronica was powerful, had connections, influence, and apparently felt threatened by Marina's growth. Marina was shaken. She felt that, no matter how hard she tried, the past would always find a way to reach her. She spent days dwelling on the situation, questioning whether she should give up, whether it wouldn't be easier to simply retreat and live a more discreet life. It was Lucas who brought her back to reality. In a frank conversation, he told Marina that giving up was exactly what Veronica wanted, that fear and insecurity were the tools that people like her used to maintain control, and that Marina had already proven to herself and to the world that she was much stronger than any attempt at sabotage. Marina listened, reflected, and decided that Lucas was right. She wasn't going to back down. She wasn't going to let Veronica or anyone else determine her worth or her future. If there was one thing Marina had learned in recent months, it was that her strength did not come from external approval, but from the certainty of who she was. So Marina changed her strategy. Instead of trying to enter traditional fashion circles, where Veronica had influence, she decided to build her own path. She focused on collaborations with independent brands, alternative artists, and collectives that valued authenticity above all else. She formed partnerships with other female entrepreneurs who had also been marginalized or underestimated, and little by little, she built a solid and loyal support network. The strategy worked. Marina's brand continued to grow organically and sustainably. In June, she was invited to speak at an event on female entrepreneurship in Manchester, alongside other businesswomen who had built successful businesses from scratch. Marina told her story honestly, spoke about attempts at boycotts, about how adversity can be transformed into fuel. The lecture was a success. Women in the audience stood up to applaud, some crying, others asking to take photos and thank her for the inspiration. Marina realized that her impact went beyond clothes or images. She was, in fact, creating a movement. And that was something Veronica, with all her influence, could not destroy. Meanwhile, her relationship with Lucas deepened in ways Marina had never experienced. It wasn't just romance, it was friendship, complicity, mutual respect. They didn't live together yet, but spent almost every day together. Lucas had his own professional demands, working on an ambitious project to revitalize a historic neighborhood in London, but always found time for Marina. And she, in turn, supported his projects with the same enthusiasm he showed for hers. It was on a long weekend when they decided to travel to the south coast of England that Marina finally allowed herself to be completely vulnerable with Lucas. They were staying in a simple guest house in Bournemouth with a sea view and spent the entire day on the beach talking about everything and nothing. At night, while dining at a seaside restaurant, Lucas asked something Marina didn't expect. "Do you still think about him?" Marina knew he was talking about Philip. She remained silent for a few seconds, pondering her answer. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not because I miss him, but because it still hurts. It hurts to know that I wasn't enough for someone I promised to love forever." Lucas held her hand across the table. "You know that has nothing to do with you, right? The problem was never you not being enough. The problem was he didn't know how to value you." "I know that in theory," Marina replied, "but in practice sometimes I still catch myself doubting myself, wondering if I really deserve all this that's happening." Lucas looked into her eyes with an intensity Marina hadn't seen before. "You deserve it, Marina, and I want to be here to remind you of that every day if you let me." Marina felt her eyes well up with tears. They weren't tears of sadness, but of gratitude. Gratitude for having found someone who saw her, who understood her, who didn't try to fix her, but just to be by her side as she rebuilt herself. "I want you to stay," Marina said, her voice choked. "I want to build something real with you." Lucas smiled, squeezed her hand, and for the first time, they said aloud what they both had known for some time. They were in love. The trip marked a new chapter in their relationship. When they returned to London, their connection was even stronger. Grandma Cindy, who had long realized how special Lucas was, completely approved of the relationship. She said Lucas had a good heart, a rare thing to find these days. But as Marina built her new life, The past continued to lurk. In July, Marina received an unexpected invitation. One of the largest sustainable fashion events in the UK, which would take place in London the following month, wanted her to be one of the curators and walk in a special segment on female reinvention. It was a huge opportunity that would solidify her position in the market. Marina accepted without hesitation, but what she didn't know was that this event would be the stage for a reunion that would change everything. Because among the event's sponsors was one of Veronica Evans's companies, and wherever Veronica was, Philip would not be far. Marina knew that, sooner or later, she would have to face the past face to face, and that moment was approaching faster than she imagined. But this time she wasn't alone. She had Lucas. She had her brand. She had her voice. And more importantly, she was certain that she was no longer the same woman who had been abandoned on that wedding night. She was someone completely new, someone who finally knew her own worth, and she was ready for whatever came next. August arrived, bringing the event that would be a milestone in Marina's career. The British Sustainable Fashion Summit would take place at Excel London, a large and modern venue that would host 3 days of lectures, fashion shows, exhibitions, and networking. Marina had been chosen as one of the curators for the panel on fashion and personal reconstruction, in addition to being confirmed to walk in the closing of the second day, in a special segment celebrating stories of women who had reinvented themselves professionally after emotional ruptures. The preparation was intense. Marina worked with a team of producers, stylists, and other curators to define the narrative of the panel, choose the speakers, and structure the presentation. It was weeks of meetings, adjustments, rehearsals. Lucas followed everything closely, always offering logistical and emotional support. Grandma Cindy, in turn, was radiant. Seeing her granddaughter not only recovered, but shining in a career she had built with her own hands, was a source of immeasurable pride. On the eve of the event, Marina had a restless night. She slept little, mentally reviewing every detail of the panel, every speech she would give on stage. She woke up early, had a hearty breakfast prepared by Lucas, and headed to the event venue. Excel London was already bustling from the early hours of the morning. There were stands of sustainable brands, exhibitors of artisanal products, and a constant buzz of industry people talking, networking, taking photos. Marina spent the first day focused on final production meetings and the fashion show rehearsal. She was so immersed in the activities that she barely had time to think about anything else. It was only late in the afternoon, when she was backstage finalizing the last adjustments with the team, that Camilla approached her with a worried expression. "Marina, I need to tell you something," Camilla said, pulling her to a more secluded corner. "What is it?" Marina asked, noticing the seriousness in her friend's tone. "Veronica Evans is here. She's one of the event sponsors and will be participating in a panel tomorrow on entrepreneurship in the wellness sector." Marina felt her stomach churn. She knew it was a possibility, but she didn't expect it to happen so soon. "It's okay," Marina replied, trying to stay calm. "I knew we'd cross paths eventually. I just didn't expect it to be now." "There's more," Camilla continued hesitantly. "From what I heard, she's accompanied by her husband, Philip Archer." The name echoed in Marina's mind like thunder. Philip, here, at the same event as her. After almost a year without seeing him, without knowing anything about him, he would simply appear as if nothing had happened. Marina took a deep breath, feeling her heart race. But this time it wasn't fear. It was a mixture of anxiety, contained anger, and, strangely, curiosity. She wanted to see what state he was in. She wanted to know if he even thought about her, if he felt any remorse for what he had done. "I'll be fine," Marina said, more to herself than to Camilla. "He no longer has power over me." Camilla squeezed her hand in support, and Marina thanked her with a nod. She sent a quick message to Lucas, telling him about the situation. He replied almost immediately, saying he would be there the next day if she needed him. Marina thanked him, but said she could handle it, because she knew she could. On the second day of the event, Marina woke up with a determination she hadn't felt in a long time. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel powerful. Black tailored trousers, a white silk blouse, and medium heels. She tied her hair in an elegant bun and applied makeup that enhanced her features without exaggeration. Looking in the mirror, she saw not the broken woman she had been a year ago, but someone reborn. Strong, whole. The panel on fashion and personal reconstruction was scheduled for 10 in the morning. The room was packed, with over 200 people in the audience. Marina went on stage alongside the other curators and speakers, feeling the adrenaline rush through her veins. She spoke with clarity and emotion about how fashion can be a tool for empowerment, about how telling stories through clothes and images can help women reconnect with their identities after moments of rupture. The audience listened in respectful silence, and at the end the applause was warm and prolonged. After the panel, Marina was approached by several people wanting to talk, take photos, exchange contacts. She smiled, thanked them, exchanged ideas. It was amidst this movement that, turning to grab a glass of water, she saw him. Philip and Veronica were across the hall, talking to a group of business people. She recognized him immediately, even from afar. He looked different, thinner, with a tired face, obvious dark circles under his eyes. Still elegant, but without the sparkle he used to have. Veronica, beside him, was impeccable as always, perfectly brushed blonde hair, immaculate white suit, erect posture. But there was something in her expression that Marina noticed even from a distance. Tension. Marina quickly averted her gaze and continued talking to the people around her, but she felt their presence like a shadow. She knew that, sooner or later, they would have to meet, and that's what happened. During the lunch break, while Marina was in the outdoor area of the pavilion, sitting on a bench in the shade, checking her phone and replying to messages, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Marina." She turned slowly, and there he was. Philip, alone. He seemed nervous, insecure, completely different from the confident man she had known. "Hi, Philip," Marina replied, with a calm that surprised even herself. "May I sit?" he asked, pointing to the space beside her on the bench. Marina hesitated for a second, but agreed. Philip sat down, maintaining a respectful distance, and remained silent for a few moments as if trying to find the right words. "I saw your lecture," he said finally. "It was powerful." "Thank you," Marina replied without emotion in her voice. "You're doing well. Better than well. You're incredible." Marina didn't answer. She just looked at him, waiting for him to get to the point. Philip sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she recognized as a sign of nervousness. "I know I don't have the right to talk to you," he began. "I know what I did was unforgivable. But I needed to see you. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Truly sorry." Marina felt a wave of emotions but maintained her composure. "Why now, Philip? Why, after almost a year, do you decide to show up and apologize?" He averted his gaze, clearly uncomfortable. "Because I made a mistake. Because I was blind. Because I thought I knew what I wanted. And I was completely wrong. And what do you want from me now? Forgiveness? Understanding?" Philip was silent, and Marina realized he was struggling to hold back his emotions. "I just wanted you to know that I recognize my mistake," he said, his voice choked, "and that if I could go back, I would. I would have done everything differently." Marina took a deep breath, feeling anger begin to emerge. "You left me, Philip, on our wedding day. You told me I was too simple, that I didn't belong in your world, and now you show up here, after I've rebuilt my life from scratch, and say you regret it. What do you expect me to do with that?" "I don't expect anything," he replied, finally looking at her. "I just needed you to know." "Knowing you made a mistake doesn't erase what you did," Marina said, her voice firm. "It doesn't erase the pain, the humiliation, the nights I spent feeling insufficient. You broke me, Philip, and I had to pick up the pieces alone." "I know," he murmured, "and I don't expect you to forgive me." Marina looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man who had hurt her, but someone clearly shaken, defeated. And that's when she realized he wasn't well. Something was wrong. "What happened, Philip?" Marina asked, more out of curiosity than concern. He hesitated, but eventually gave in. "Veronica and I, We're having problems. Her company is involved in a financial scandal. Investigations, lawsuits, huge losses. And I, as a partner in some of the businesses, am being dragged along. We're practically bankrupt. And the marriage isn't doing well either. She's not who I thought she was." Marina listened and felt not satisfaction, but a kind of neutrality. She wasn't happy with his misfortune, but she didn't feel sorry either. "I'm sorry you're going through that," Marina said, and it was sincere. "But you need to understand one thing, Philip. You left me when I was at rock bottom. When I needed you, when I had promised my life to you, you turned your back. And now that I've gotten back on my feet, that I've rebuilt who I am, you don't have the right to come back and expect me to welcome you with open arms. I moved on, and you should do the same." Philip lowered his head, and Marina saw a tear stream down his face, but she didn't feel like comforting him. It was no longer her problem. "I understand," he said, his voice almost inaudible. "I just wanted you to know that you were never the problem. The problem was always me." Marina stood up, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "I know that, Philip. It took me a while to understand, but I know. And I appreciate you coming to talk to me. But now, I need to go. I have a fashion show to prepare for, and a life to live. Take care." She walked away without looking back, feeling a lightness she hadn't expected. There was no more anger, there was no more resentment, just the certainty that that chapter was, finally, closed. The fashion show happened in the late afternoon. Marina was backstage being made up and dressed when Lucas appeared. He had managed to leave work early to be there. When he saw Marina, he smiled with that calm way that always soothed her. "How are you?" he asked, holding her hand. "I'm fine," Marina replied, and it was true. "He showed up, we talked, and I realized he no longer has power over me." Lucas hugged her, and Marina felt the security of that embrace. She felt that no matter what happened, she had someone by her side who truly saw her, who truly valued her. When the music started and Marina was called to enter the runway, she took a deep breath. She wore a long flowing dress in shades of white and beige, representing a new beginning, the purity of a new phase. Her hair was loose, her feet bare, and she carried a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands. Marina entered the runway and felt the spotlights on her. The audience was silent, attentive. She walked with confidence, with her head held high, and when she reached the end of the runway, she stopped. She looked at the audience and smiled. It wasn't a forced or artificial smile. It was genuine, because at that moment Marina knew exactly who she was and how much she had fought to get there. When she returned backstage, she was greeted with applause from the team. Lucas was waiting for her with flowers. Grandma Cindy, who was in the audience, sent a message saying she was crying with pride. Later, at the closing cocktail party, Marina circulated through the event, talked to dozens of people, made new contacts, closed partnerships. She never saw Philip or Veronica again, and she didn't bother looking for them. That no longer mattered. On the way back home, with Lucas driving and Marina in the passenger seat, she looked out the window and watched the city pass by. London, with all its lights, its chaos, its immensity. And for the first time in a long time, she felt she belonged there, that she had found her place, not beside anyone but within herself. Lucas held her hand, intertwining their fingers, and Marina smiled. She knew there would still be challenges, that life would never be perfect, but she also knew that now she had the tools to face whatever came. She had her voice, her strength, her worth, and no one could take that away. The months that followed the event were a period of consolidation for Marina, not only professionally, but emotionally. The reunion with Philip had been an important milestone, a kind of closure she didn't know she needed. Seeing the man who had destroyed her in such a fragile state brought neither satisfaction nor anger. It brought only the confirmation that she had made the right choices, that moving forward, rebuilding herself, investing in herself, had been the right path. Marina's brand grew consistently. The third collection was launched in September, this time including not only clothes but also accessories, canvas bags with original phrases, notebooks with personalized covers, and even scented candles with symbolic names like Rebirth, Inner Strength, and New Beginning. Each product carried a story, a message, a purpose, and customers responded to that. They were not just consumers, but a community of women who supported each other, who shared their journeys and who found in Marina's words and creations a reflection of their own struggles. Marina hired 2 assistants to help her with the brand's logistics. She could no longer do everything alone. Orders came from all over the UK, and there was even interest from some international multi-brand stores in representing the brand. It was a growth Marina had never imagined, but instead of getting carried away by the pressure, she chose to grow at her own pace. She didn't want to lose the essence of what she had created. She didn't want the brand to become just another business. She wanted it to continue being a space of welcome, of truth. Lucas continued to be her safe harbor. They had decided, after long conversations, that it was time to move in together, not out of pressure, but because it made sense. They spent most of their time together anyway, and both felt it was the natural next step. They found a 2-bedroom apartment in Notting Hill, in a charming old building with a large balcony and plenty of natural light. Grandma Cindy approved of the move, saying it was time for Marina to fly with, her own wings, but always with an open door to come back whenever she wanted. The move was emotional. Marina decorated the apartment carefully, mixing pieces she and Lucas chose together, plants, paintings by local artists, and objects that told their stories. There was an entire bookshelf dedicated to their books, a corner of the living room transformed into an office for Marina to work, and a space on the balcony where Lucas drew his architectural projects. It was a home. The first real home Marina felt she was building with someone, and the difference was that this time she wasn't building on empty promises, but on respect, partnership, and true love. In October, Marina received an unexpected invitation. A digital content producer wanted to make a short documentary about her journey. The idea was to tell the story of female entrepreneurs who had transformed pain into purpose, and Marina would be one of the protagonists. She hesitated at first, not out of fear of exposing her story, but fearing that her journey might seem too grand, too important, when in reality she still saw herself as an ordinary person, just trying to live the best way possible. It was Lucas who encouraged her to accept. He said her story wasn't about being extraordinary, but about being human, about making mistakes, falling, and choosing to get up. And that was exactly what other women needed to hear. Marina accepted. The filming took place over 3 weeks in different locations, in the apartment she shared with Lucas, at Grandma Cindy's house, behind the scenes of a photo shoot, at brand events. The team also interviewed people who were part of her journey. Camilla, the curator who believed in her, Brandon, the photographer who first put her in front of the cameras, clients who bought her products and found strength in the messages. During one of the recordings, the producer asked Marina to return to the place where everything had fallen apart, the estate in the Cotswolds where her wedding had been. Marina didn't know if she could do it, but something inside her told her she needed to. It was a way of truly closing the cycle, of looking at that space that had held so much pain and re-signifying it. Lucas went with her. They arrived at the estate on a cloudy October afternoon, the air heavy with the threat of rain. The place was empty, available only for filming. Marina walked through the garden where the ceremony had been, through the hall where the party had been, and finally to the cottage where everything had ended. She stood there, in front of the door, taking deep breaths, feeling the weight of the memories. But it was different now. There was no more sharp pain, only a distant sadness, like someone looking at an old photograph of someone who no longer exists. The producer asked if she wanted to talk about what she felt, and Marina agreed. She sat on a bench in the garden with the camera in front of her and spoke. "I came here believing I was starting my story," Marina said, her voice firm but emotional. "But what happened was that this story ended before it even began. And for a long time, I thought it was because I wasn't enough, because I didn't fit into his world. But the truth is, I fit into my own world. And I just needed time to realize that. Coming back here doesn't hurt anymore. Because this place doesn't define who I am. It defines only a moment. And moments pass. When she finished speaking, Marina felt she had left behind the last trace of pain she still carried. It was as if, by speaking those words aloud, she had finally freed herself. The documentary was released in November on a streaming platform, and the impact was immediate. Thousands of women watched, commented, shared. Marina received messages from all over the country, from women thanking her for having the courage to expose her vulnerability, to show that it was possible to start over, to prove that pain was not the end but the beginning of something new. The success of the documentary brought even more visibility to the brand. Marina was invited to participate in podcasts, television programs, corporate events as a motivational speaker. She accepted some invitations, always carefully, always striving to maintain authenticity. She didn't want to become just another story of overcoming sold as a product. She wanted to continue being real, continue being herself. It was in December, on a trip Marina and Lucas took to the Pembrokeshire coast, Wales, that they had a conversation that would change everything. They were staying in a simple guest house facing the sea and spent their days walking through the dunes, swimming, talking about life, about the future. In one of these conversations, as they watched the sunset sitting on the sand, Lucas asked Marina about her dreams. Not professional dreams, but personal ones. What she wanted for her life. Marina thought for a few moments before answering. "I want to keep creating," she said. "I want the brand to grow, but in a healthy way, without losing its essence. I want to help more women find their voices. And personally, I want to build a peaceful life, no drama, no games, just truth, and I want to build that with you." Lucas smiled, and Marina saw in his eyes something that made her sure she had made the right choices. "I want that too," he said. "And maybe, who knows, in the future, we can think about having a family. Not now, but when we're ready." Marina felt her heart warm. The idea of having children, of building a family with Lucas, was something she had started to consider, but hadn't yet had the courage to speak about. Knowing he thought the same made her profoundly happy. "I'd like that," Marina replied, holding his hand. "But for now, I just want to enjoy this, the two of us, this peace." And that's what they did. They spent the entire week on the Pembrokeshire coast, disconnected from the world, just enjoying each other's company, recharging their energy, planning the future. When they returned to London, it was already late December, and the year was coming to an end. Marina looked back and could barely believe everything that had happened in just over a year. From a broken, devastated, rudderless woman, she had transformed into someone confident, fulfilled, master of her own destiny. And it hadn't been easy. There were days when she wanted to give up, days when the pain seemed greater than any hope. But she didn't give up. She chose every day to get up. She chose to believe she deserved better, and that choice made all the difference. On New Year's Eve, Marina organized a small celebration at the apartment. She invited Grandma Cindy, some close friends, Camilla, and the team that helped her with the brand. Lucas was by her side, organizing the house, preparing food, welcoming guests with that natural hospitality he had. When the clock struck midnight and fireworks began to explode in the London sky, Marina was on the balcony beside Lucas looking up. The colorful lights illuminated the sky, and Marina made a silent wish. She didn't ask for success, fame, or money. She just asked to continue being herself, to never forget where she came from, everything she went through, everything she learned. Lucas hugged her from behind, and Marina felt a deep peace. She turned to him, and they kissed as the fireworks continued to explode around them. The following months were a period of consolidation. The brand continued to grow, but organically. Marina opened a small physical store in Shoreditch, a cozy space that functioned not only as a point of sale, but as a meeting place for women to share their stories. She organized monthly events, discussion groups, lectures. The store became a reference point, a place where women felt safe, welcomed, seen. Lucas, in turn, was promoted at the architecture firm where he worked. He was leading an important revitalization project for a historic neighborhood, and Marina supported him every step of the way, just as he had always supported her. Grandma Cindy, who had turned 75, was more lucid and lively than ever. She said that seeing her granddaughter happy was the greatest gift life could have given her. Marina visited her grandmother every week, always bringing news, always making sure she knew how much she was loved and important. It was on a March afternoon, while Marina was at the store organizing the new collection, that she received unexpected news. Camilla called, excited, saying that Marina had been nominated for a Women's Entrepreneurship Award, promoted by one of the country's largest institutions supporting small businesses. The ceremony would be in London the following month, and Marina was one of the finalists. Marina was speechless. She never imagined she would be recognized in this way. But at the same time she felt a deep pride, not for the award itself, but for what it represented. Proof that she had built something real, something significant. The awards ceremony took place at a luxurious hotel on Regent Street. Marina was accompanied by Lucas and Grandma Cindy, both impeccably dressed for the occasion. When her name was announced as the winner of the Best Social Impact Project category, Marina went on stage with a racing heart, firmly holding the trophy she had just received. She stood in front of the microphone, looking at the packed audience, and took a deep breath before speaking. "I don't know if I deserve this award," she began sincerely, "but I know it represents much more than me. It represents all the women who were once broken, who were considered insufficient, who were left behind, and who chose to get up. This award is for you, and I hope that in some way my story can inspire other women to believe in their own worth, to build their own journeys, to never give up on themselves. Thank you." The applause was intense, and when Marina descended from the stage, she was greeted by Lucas and Grandma Cindy with emotional hugs. That was a moment she would never forget. But in the end, it wasn't the award that mattered. It wasn't the applause, the photos, the recognition. What truly mattered was what Marina had learned throughout that journey, that a person's worth doesn't come from outside, doesn't come from others' approval, doesn't come from who chooses or rejects you. It comes from within. It comes from the certainty of who you are, the respect you have for yourself, the ability to get up even when everything seems lost. Marina learned that being abandoned didn't mean being insufficient. It just meant being in the wrong place, with the wrong person, and that sometimes the greatest pains are the greatest gifts, because they push us inward, force us to truly know ourselves, to rebuild ourselves in a stronger and more authentic way. She learned that true love doesn't demand changes, doesn't impose conditions, doesn't measure worth. It is simply present, it supports, it respects, and it celebrates, and that's what she found in Lucas. Not a savior, not a substitute, but a partner. Someone who walked beside her, without trying to guide her, without trying to fix her, just being present. On a late autumn afternoon, Marina and Lucas returned to Brighton Beach, the place where she had first told him about Philip. They walked along the seafront, hand in hand, in comfortable silence. When they reached an emptier stretch, they sat on the sand and stayed there, just looking at the sea, listening to the sound of the waves. It was Lucas who broke the silence. "Are you happy?" Marina turned to him, surprised by the question. She thought for a few seconds before answering. "Yes," she said with conviction. "I am. Not the way I imagined I would be, but in a better way, more real, more true." Lucas smiled, and Marina felt she didn't need to say anything more, because he understood, because they understood each other. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. Marina looked at that scene and thought of everything she had lived. The pains, the achievements, the losses, the new beginnings. And she realized that, in the end, it had all been worth it, because it had led her there, to that moment of peace, of fullness, of true love. And it was there, on that beach, on that ordinary late afternoon, that Marina understood the greatest lesson of all. The happy ending wasn't about shining for the world. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about shining for herself. It was about looking in the mirror and recognizing the person reflected. It was about knowing, with every cell of her body, that she was enough, always was, always will be. And Marina finally knew it. And she would never again doubt her own light. Dear listeners, we hope Marina and Lucas's story has touched your heart. If you were moved, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what resonated with you the most. Every day we bring intense stories like this, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.